Life won't always hand you comfort. Some mornings you'll wake up feeling heavy, not because you're weak, but because life just weighs more sometimes. But here's the truth most people don't like to hear. Happiness isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you build brick by brick, even when everything around you feels like it's falling apart. Today, let's talk about what it really means to push yourself to be happy every single day, even when life is hard. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for happiness to show up like a paycheck after hard work. They think, once I get the promotion, once I lose the weight, once I find the right person, then I'll be happy. But happiness doesn't work that way. Happiness isn't a destination that appears after struggle. It's a decision you make in the middle of it. You can have the same circumstances as someone else, but your experience changes entirely based on what you decide to focus on. Happiness doesn't wait for perfect timing. It grows from perspective, and the truth is that perspective starts with you choosing how to respond when life doesn't go your way. Choosing happiness doesn't mean pretending everything's okay when it's not. It's not about slapping a smile on pain or ignoring your reality. It's about acknowledging that things are hard, but deciding that those hard things don't have to define your day. You might wake up tired, overwhelmed, or anxious, but in that moment, you can still choose to find one thing, just one, to be grateful for. That tiny act of choice begins to shift your emotional state, and that's where happiness starts to take root. It's not about escaping pain, it's about not letting pain become your permanent home. The problem is, most of us have been taught to tie happiness to achievement. We chase milestones, hoping they'll fix how we feel, but achievements are temporary, and once the moment fades, we start looking for the next thing to fill the gap. That's not happiness. That's dependency. Happiness isn't found in getting more. It's found in needing less to feel content. It's in the ability to say, I have enough, and I am enough, right now, even when the outside world tries to convince you otherwise. When you understand that happiness is a choice, you take back your power from the circumstances trying to control you. Choosing happiness doesn't mean you'll never struggle. It means you'll stop giving struggle all the power. Life will test you, stretch you, and sometimes break your expectations. But in those moments, you have two options: react with bitterness or respond with growth. The first keeps you stuck, the second moves you forward. Choosing happiness is like exercising a muscle. The more you practice it, the stronger it gets. It becomes less about forcing yourself to feel good and more about knowing how to return to balance faster each time life throws you off. You can't wait for happiness to find you because it's already inside you, buried beneath the noise of stress, comparison, and doubt. Every time you compare your life to someone else's, you bury your own joy a little deeper. Every time you say, I'll be happy when, you delay your peace for a future that might never come. The shift happens when you stop chasing and start creating, when you start asking, what can I do right now that adds meaning even in small ways? Happiness is the quiet reward that follows intentional living. Sometimes the choice to be happy is as simple as getting out of bed and taking one small step in the right direction. It's drinking water instead of skipping breakfast, stepping outside for a walk instead of scrolling through your phone, writing down something good instead of replaying something bad. Those tiny choices seem insignificant, but they compound. They create emotional momentum. And one day, you'll look back and realize you built a version of happiness that doesn't depend on luck. It depends on discipline. That's how powerful your daily choices are. And when you understand that happiness is your responsibility, not the world's, everything changes. You stop waiting for people to make you feel appreciated. You stop waiting for circumstances to calm down. You stop waiting for life to be fair. You realize that the power to create peace has always been yours. You don't owe the world your misery, you owe yourself your own light. Happiness isn't something you find. It's something you protect, nurture, and choose every single day, especially when life feels hardest. When life feels heavy, most people wait for a massive breakthrough to feel better. They want something big to change before they allow themselves to breathe again. But real change doesn't start with something big. It starts with something small. It's the small, almost invisible actions that start shifting your emotional state from chaos to calm. You don't need a total life overhaul to feel better. You need one intentional step that reminds your mind and body that you're still in control. Every choice, every routine, every small act of care adds up to something powerful: momentum. And momentum is the secret weapon that carries you out of the storm one step at a time. When your mind is racing and your heart feels heavy, it's easy to think, what's the point of doing anything? That's when you need to do something. Not everything, just something. It could be as simple as cleaning your space, taking a deep breath, stretching your body, or writing down 3 things you're grateful for. Those little acts are not meaningless. They are mental resets, signals to your brain that say, I'm not powerless. Because when your thoughts spiral, your actions remind you of your agency. Every small thing you do with intention becomes proof that you can influence how you feel, even if you can't control what's happening around you. People underestimate how much small habits shape their emotional world. The music you listen to, the people you talk to, the content you consume, these tiny inputs build your mood brick by brick. The question isn't, how can I be happy instantly? The question is, what little thing can I do right now that moves me 1 inch closer to peace? If you can master that mindset, you'll find that happiness doesn't come from chasing big moments. It comes from stacking small, intentional ones. The small things don't fix everything, but they build resilience, and resilience changes everything. Think about how much your day changes with one small positive action. Waking up 5 minutes earlier to breathe before the noise starts, choosing a kind thought over a critical one, replacing one complaint with one moment of gratitude. These things sound insignificant, but they're like emotional investments. Each one earns interest over time. The reason most people never feel better is that they underestimate these daily deposits. They wait for a good day to feel good instead of realizing that good days are built one small choice at a time. You can't wait for motivation. You create it through movement, and that movement starts small. When life is hard, your brain craves comfort, and it will try to talk you out of doing the small things that help. It will say, "What's the point?" or "It won't matter." That's when you have to override the noise. You do it anyway. You take a walk anyway. You drink water anyway. You write anyway. You show up anyway. Because the small act of showing up is the bridge between hopelessness and healing. You can't always control your mood, but you can control your direction. And that direction begins the moment you decide to do one thing that supports your well-being. The truth is, no one suddenly wakes up feeling different. They build the difference through repetition. You brush your teeth every day because you know it keeps you healthy. The same goes for your mind. You need daily hygiene for your thoughts and emotions. Meditate, reflect, move your body, disconnect from negativity. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. You'll find that those small acts done with intention slowly recalibrate your emotional baseline. You won't always notice the shift immediately, but over time, you'll realize you don't fall apart as easily. You bounce back faster because you've trained your mind to return to peace. Every day offers 100 small opportunities to shift your state, and most people walk right past them. But if you start recognizing them, those tiny choices between chaos and calm, between reaction and reflection, you'll find yourself living with more steadiness, more clarity, more quiet strength. The small things you do daily are not small at all. They're the foundation of your emotional power. They're what help you stay steady in storms and grateful in calm, not because life suddenly got easier, but because you learned to move differently through it, one intentional step at a time. One of the biggest mistakes people make when life gets hard is confusing what they feel with who they are. You feel sad, so you start believing you are a sad person. You feel anxious, so you start identifying as someone who's broken or weak. But emotions are visitors, not permanent residents. They come and go, and your job is to learn how to acknowledge them without giving them the keys to your entire house. When you start separating what you feel from who you are, you give yourself permission to experience emotion without being consumed by it. That's how emotional strength is built, not by denying your feelings, but by refusing to let them define your identity. Feelings are like weather, they change constantly. Sometimes it rains for a day, sometimes for a week, but it never rains forever. The problem is, we often build our lives around storms that were never meant to last. You have to remember that what you feel is a reflection of your current state, not a statement about your worth. Pain doesn't make you broken, it makes you human. Fear doesn't make you weak, it means you care. The danger isn't in feeling too much, it's in forgetting that feelings are messages, not definitions. They're signals meant to be understood, not verdicts meant to imprison you. When you let your emotions define who you are, you start living reactively instead of intentionally. You wake up and let your mood decide your actions instead of your values guiding your choices. You might tell yourself, I'm just not the kind of person who can handle stress, or I'm too emotional to stay calm, and suddenly you've built a whole identity around a temporary feeling. But when you can say, I feel overwhelmed right now, instead of I am overwhelmed, you take back your power, you create space between yourself and the emotion, and that space is where choice lives. It's the difference between drowning in a wave and learning to ride it. There's a quiet power that comes from watching your emotions instead of becoming them. You start realizing that feelings don't control you unless you let them. Anger, sadness, frustration, they all have a purpose, but that purpose isn't to take charge of your life. It's to teach you something about what matters to you, what hurts you, and what you need. When you treat emotions as information instead of identity, you stop fighting them. You stop labeling yourself as good or bad for feeling certain ways. You simply notice, breathe, and choose your next move consciously. That's emotional maturity, not the absence of emotion, but the awareness of it. Most people build their identity around their pain because it gives them a sense of control in chaos. If you've been hurt long enough, you start to believe that hurt is just who you are, but you're not your past and you're not your trauma. You're the person who survived it. That shift in language changes everything. When you stop saying, this is who I am, and start saying, this is what I've experienced, you reclaim your freedom. You give yourself the chance to grow beyond the story that pain tried to write for you. You begin to see that what happened to you doesn't have to decide what happens through you. Learning to separate feeling from identity also means giving yourself grace. You're allowed to have bad days without calling yourself a failure. You're allowed to struggle without assuming you're weak. The goal isn't to avoid negative feelings, it's to stop letting them convince you that you're stuck. The more you practice observing your emotions instead of becoming them, the easier it gets to navigate them with perspective. You start responding instead of reacting. You start breathing instead of breaking. And every time you choose that awareness, you strengthen your emotional resilience. Because the truth is, you are not your sadness. You are not your anxiety. You are not your anger. You feel those things, but you are something deeper than all of them. You are the awareness beneath the emotion, the observer who notices the storm but doesn't become it. Once you understand that, emotions lose their control over you. They come, they pass, and you stay grounded. You become someone who feels everything but is defined by nothing, someone who can walk through chaos and still remember who they are underneath it all. When life feels overwhelming, the first thing most people lose is focus. They start pouring energy into things they can't change. What people think of them, what didn't go right, what could happen next. But the truth is, every ounce of energy you spend on what's out of your hands is energy you steal from what's still in your hands. The moment you redirect your attention to what you can control, life doesn't instantly get easier, but it starts making more sense. Because peace doesn't come from having control over everything. It comes from mastering the few things that actually belong to you: your attitude, your effort, and your response. Those three things alone can change how you experience everything else. There's a kind of quiet chaos that comes from trying to control what's uncontrollable. You keep replaying conversations in your mind, wishing you said something different. You overthink people's opinions, trying to fix how they see you. You stress over the future, trying to predict what's going to happen. But none of that brings peace. It only multiplies pressure. The mind loves to wander where it has no power. And that's why redirecting focus is a discipline. It's training yourself to say, "This isn't mine to carry," and turning your energy toward what is. That simple shift doesn't remove the challenge, but it gives you the strength to move through it with clarity. Every moment you spend focused on what you can't control is a moment you lose from improving what you can. When you start looking at your life through that lens, you realize how much time you've wasted trying to change things that were never your responsibility. You can't control who stays or leaves, but you can control how you treat yourself when they do. You can't control if opportunities appear, but you can control how prepared you are when they come. You can't control the storm, but you can control the direction of your sail. The shift is subtle, but it's powerful, because control is never about domination. It's about direction. There's strength in accepting that some things are simply beyond you. Not everything broken needs fixing, not every person needs convincing, and not every problem needs solving right now. The moment you learn to release control over outcomes, you open space for peace to enter. And that peace gives you room to focus on growth instead of resistance. When you spend all your energy trying to control others or predict the future, you miss the power of the present. But when you focus on what's here now in your hands, you start to find momentum again. You stop feeling stuck because you realize movement doesn't require control, it requires focus. Redirecting your focus also means being honest with yourself about where your attention goes. Are you feeding your fears more than your faith? Are you giving more energy to the problem than to the solution? What you feed grows. If you feed the anxiety of the unknown, it multiplies. But if you feed the clarity of what's within your reach, you'll find calm even in the chaos. Every day gives you two options: to fight what's out of your control or to work with what's in your control. The first drains you, the second develops you. The more you practice choosing the second, the more powerful and peaceful you become. Life will always give you variables you can't manage: people, timing, circumstances, but that's not the point. The point is to manage yourself inside those variables. It's learning to stay steady when everything else wobbles. That's what emotional control looks like. It's not suppressing emotion, it's mastering reaction. It's choosing not to spiral when things don't go your way. It's breathing before responding, pausing before assuming, acting before overthinking. The more you practice this internal control, the less you'll feel like a victim of external chaos. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf them. And once you start focusing only on what you can control, life starts to simplify. You stop wasting time on people who drain you, and you start investing in those who match your peace. You stop arguing with what's already happened, and you start building with what you have left. You stop waiting for certainty, and you start moving with confidence. Redirecting your focus isn't about ignoring problems. It's about empowering yourself to deal with them from a position of strength. Because when your attention aligns with your control, you stop chasing calm and you start creating it right where you are. Most people think discipline only applies to your habits, your routines, your productivity, but emotional discipline is what holds everything else together. It's the ability to feel everything without letting those feelings dictate your behavior. It's what keeps you grounded when frustration hits, calm when pressure rises, and clear when emotions try to cloud your thinking. Life will always test your emotions, and if you don't learn how to manage them, they'll manage you. Emotional discipline doesn't mean you never get angry, sad, or scared. It means you've learned how to navigate those emotions without losing control of your peace. It's self-respect in motion, and it's built one decision at a time. Emotional discipline begins with awareness. You can't manage what you don't recognize. Most people react before they even understand what they're reacting to. They get caught up in the storm of emotion, saying or doing things that create more damage than the situation itself. But the disciplined mind pauses. It takes a breath. It observes the emotion before responding to it. That pause is where maturity lives. It's where you shift from impulsive reaction to intentional response. The power isn't in avoiding emotion. It's in mastering the space between feeling and action. That's where control begins. The truth is, emotional discipline is built in the quiet moments, when no one's watching, when you're choosing patience over pride, when you're staying calm even though every part of you wants to fight back. It's in those small internal battles that strength is forged. You learn to remind yourself, I don't have to attend every argument I'm invited to. I don't have to respond to every emotion that knocks. That's how you build endurance. Because if you can stay calm when things are falling apart, if you can keep your peace when the world expects your chaos, that's not weakness, that's power. People often confuse emotional discipline with suppression. Suppression is pretending you're fine when you're not. Discipline is acknowledging that you're not fine, but choosing not to let it control your behavior. Suppression buries emotions. Discipline channels them. It turns pain into purpose, anger into clarity, fear into focus. It's not about denying how you feel. It's about deciding how to move through it with strength and self-respect. Emotional discipline gives you space to process without destroying yourself or others in the process. It's emotional maturity meeting personal responsibility. To build emotional discipline, you have to learn to sit with discomfort. Most people rush to escape pain, but real growth happens when you learn to stay with it long enough to understand it. Every emotion has a message, and if you're always running from it, you'll never hear what it's trying to teach you. Sometimes that message is slow down. Sometimes it's speak up. Sometimes it's let go. The more you listen, the more fluent you become in your emotional language. And once you understand your emotions, they stop feeling like enemies. You begin to see them as guides. That's the point where discipline turns into wisdom. Emotional discipline also requires consistency. You can't expect to master your emotions overnight. Just like physical training, it takes daily repetition. Every time you choose calm over chaos, every time you breathe instead of react, every time you respond with grace instead of anger, you're rewiring your brain to handle life better. You're teaching your nervous system that peace is your default, not panic. And over time, that practice becomes who you are. You start living from a place of strength instead of survival. You stop wasting energy on what doesn't deserve a reaction and start investing it in what actually moves you forward. And when you finally develop emotional discipline, you begin to see how much power you've been giving away to temporary feelings. You stop letting mood swings control your day. You stop letting other people's behavior dictate your peace. You stop treating every emotion like an emergency because you've built something stronger inside you, something steady, something still. Emotional discipline doesn't make life easy, but it makes you unshakable in the middle of it. It turns pain into patience, chaos into clarity, and emotion into energy that serves you instead of sabotages you.